The autumn rain drummed against the towering windows of Bella Vista, Manhattan's most exclusive Italian restaurant. Perched on the 32nd floor of the Meridian Tower, below, the city's lights sparkled like scattered diamonds, while inside, crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in pristine white linen. The air hummed with quiet sophistication, the gentle clink of crystal, whispered conversations of Manhattan's elite, the soft rustle of silk in tailored suits. In this rarefied atmosphere, power brokers savored dishes that were more art than food, truffle risotto infused with white truffles flown in from Piedmont, aged Barolo that had waited decades for this moment, delicate pasta handmade by chefs trained in Michelin-starred kitchens. Each plate told a story of exclusivity, each bottle a testament to wealth beyond measure. Vincent Romano, the maitre d', moved through this domain with practiced grace, earned over 15 years of refined service. At 52, his silver hair was immaculately styled, his black suit pressed to perfection, his manner a careful balance of deference and authority. He surveyed his kingdom with satisfaction. Built on one unshakable principle, Bella Vista was not just a restaurant, but a fortress of sophistication where only the worthy were welcomed. At exactly 8:47 p.m., the polished brass doors swung open and Sarah Mitchell stepped inside. The entrance was a statement, marble floors reflecting chandelier light, walls adorned with Renaissance paintings, an atmosphere thick with privilege. At 23, Sarah moved with quiet determination, her golden hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wisps framing a face flushed from the October chill. She wore faded jeans, scuffed white sneakers, and a red pizza delivery jacket bearing Tony's Pizza logo, a stark contrast to the designer labels filling the restaurant. In her hands, she carried two large pizza boxes, their cardboard edges damp from rain. The effect was immediate. Conversations died mid-sentence as heads turned with mechanical precision, eyes widening at this impossible sight. A pizza delivery girl in Bella Vista was like finding a paper airplane in a museum, so utterly out of place it challenged the very order of things. Vincent's face transformed from curiosity to thunderous disapproval as he strode toward her. Italian leather shoes clicking against marble with sharp authority. Each step was measured, deliberate, designed to intimidate. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying contempt that could freeze champagne mid-bubble. "This is a private establishment. We do not accept deliveries through the main entrance." He pronounced deliveries as if it were something distasteful. "Service personnel use the freight elevator, always." The words hung like a slap. Around the dining room, patrons leaned forward, some hiding smiles behind wine glasses, others openly staring as if watching theater. Sarah looked up at him, her blue eyes calm and steady, reflecting composure that seemed supernatural given the hostility surrounding her. Something in her gaze suggested she had weathered storms far fiercer than Vincent Romano's disapproval. For a fleeting moment, she studied the restaurant's layout with the keen attention of someone cataloging operational inefficiencies rather than simply enduring humiliation. "I have a delivery for table 12, she said simply, her voice clear despite the hostile stares. Mr. Castellano ordered 2 large pizzas, 1 margarita, 1 pepperoni. The order was placed 47 minutes ago, and I was specifically instructed to deliver them directly to his table." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter swept through the dining room. At table 12, positioned near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, Marcus Castellano looked up from his conversation with 3 impeccably dressed companions. A real estate mogul whose name appeared regularly in society pages. Marcus was known for eccentric tastes and treating social conventions as suggestions. He waved dismissively, as if brushing away an insect. "Ah, yes, the pizza experiment," he said, his tone suggesting anthropological study. "My guests expressed curiosity about, what did you call it? Margaret, how the other half eats." His companions tittered appreciatively, their laughter carrying the sharp edge of people who had never known uncertainty about their next meal. Vincent's jaw tightened. The very idea of pizza boxes in his restaurant was an affront to everything he had built. Bella Vista was a temple to culinary refinement, where presentation was elevated to art form. The presence of takeout food was like hanging a crayon drawing next to a Monet. "This is completely inappropriate," he hissed, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed restaurant. "Bella Vista serves cuisine, not." He gestured helplessly at the pizza boxes. "We maintain certain standards here. This establishment has a reputation to uphold." Sarah's expression didn't change by a flicker. For 3 months, she had walked into boardrooms, penthouses, and exclusive establishments, carrying pizza boxes and absorbing casual cruelty from people who believed wealth gave them license to treat others as less than human. Each delivery had been a masterclass in humility, but more than that, each interaction had been data, carefully cataloging how power operated in Manhattan's elite circles. "Just doing my job, sir," she replied, setting the boxes on a nearby service cart with careful dignity. The gesture somehow managed to dignify both the food and the moment, though to several diners, even this seemed to offend their sensibilities. Mrs. Pemberton, a socialite whose name appeared in gossip columns more than charity reports, leaned toward her companion with a predatory smile. Her jewelry caught the light, diamonds that could have funded schools, emeralds that had belonged to European royalty, all worn with casual indifference. "Can you believe they let just anyone walk in here now?" she whispered, though her voice carried clearly, designed to be overheard. "What's next?" "Fast food workers at the Met Gala. I suppose standards really are declining everywhere." Sarah heard every word, as she was meant to. She had heard variations of this conversation dozens of times over the past 3 months. The casual dismissal, the automatic assumption of superiority, the complete inability to see service workers as fully human. As she approached table 12, Sarah felt the weight of dozens of eyes, each gaze heavy with judgment. The walk across the dining room felt like crossing a minefield, every step watched and evaluated. Marcus Castellano looked up with an indulgent smile that suggested he was doing her an enormous favor by acknowledging her existence. His suit was probably worth more than most people's cars. Italian silk with subtle pinstripes, paired with a watch that could have bought a house. "How much do I owe you, sweetheart?" he asked, the endearment rolling off his tongue with casual condescension, a reminder of the vast gulf between his position and hers. $68.50, Sarah replied, standing straight despite the scrutiny pressing down from every corner. Her voice was steady, professional, giving no hint of her mental calculations about profit margins and operational costs that seemed oddly sophisticated for someone in her apparent position. Marcus reached for his wallet, but Margaret Wellington, whose family name graced museum wings, grabbed his arm with manicured nails. "Marcus, surely you're not going to bump her. She's just delivering pizza. It's not like she's providing real service. This is just transportation." "You don't tip the mailman, do you?" The comment drew nods from nearby tables. Marcus chuckled, the sound devoid of warmth. "Of course. Margaret, no point encouraging this sort of informality." He counted out exact change, making a show of placing each bill on the table rather than handing it to Sarah directly. As Sarah reached for the money, her wallet, a simple black leather bifold, slipped from her jacket pocket. The movement was natural, unforced, the kind of accident that happened constantly to people juggling multiple tasks. When she bent to retrieve it, something caught the light, something that shouldn't have been there. A card, unmistakable in its weight and finish, gleamed against the marble floor. It was black, not ordinary credit card black, but the deep matte black of something exclusive. The American Express Centurion card, the legendary black card that no amount of money could simply buy. That required wealth that moved markets and shaped economies. The effect was immediate and electric. Marcus's eyes widened, his casual arrogance evaporating like mist in sunlight. His mouth opened, then closed. then opened again as his mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The black card was legend in Manhattan's elite circles, a symbol of wealth so extreme that even most millionaires couldn't qualify. Margaret Wellington felt her perfectly composed expression crack. She had heard whispers of the black card at charity galas, but had never actually seen one. The waiting list was rumored to be decades long, the financial requirements so stringent that entire corporations couldn't meet them. Her fingers unconsciously twisted the emerald ring on her finger, a family heirloom that suddenly felt like costume jewelry compared to what lay before them. "Is that?" Marcus began, his voice barely a whisper. Around the restaurant, conversations died as if someone had turned off the sound. Servers stopped mid-stride, their trained professionalism cracking as they stared. Vincent Romano felt his legs go weak, his mind reeling as he tried to reconcile the young woman in delivery clothes with the implications of what lay gleaming on his floor. The black card represented more than wealth. It represented financial power that could reshape industries, that could buy and sell restaurants like Bella Vista without a second thought. Its holders were rumored to include tech billionaires, oil magnates, and heads of state. Sarah looked down at the card, then back at Marcus, and for the first time that evening, she allowed herself a smile. Not the practiced smile of a service worker maintaining politeness, but something altogether more powerful. The smile of someone who had been underestimated for the last time. "Yes," she said simply, her voice carrying new weight that seemed to change the very air. She bent gracefully and retrieved the card, tucking it back into her wallet with casual care. The gesture was deliberate, unhurried, designed to let everyone present absorb the full implications. The restaurant had gone completely silent, the kind of silence that followed earthquakes, a stunned, ringing quiet that pressed against everyone present. Even the kitchen noise had stopped. Servers stood frozen with plates half raised, their professional composure shattered. Diners sat with forks suspended between plate and mouth, minds racing to understand how their world had just been turned upside down. Sarah straightened, her demeanor shifting with the subtlety of sunrise, gradual but unmistakable. The deference was gone, melted away like frost, replaced by something that made the air itself seem to change. "Thank you for your business," she said to Marcus, her voice carrying new weight. "I'll see you all tomorrow." She turned and walked toward the door, footsteps echoing in the silence. Every eye followed her progress, minds scrambling to understand what they had witnessed. As she reached the entrance, she paused and looked back over her shoulder. "Oh, and Vincent," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the stunned dining room. "You might want to start updating your resume." The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving behind a room full of people whose world had just shifted on its axis. The next morning arrived with crisp autumn clarity that made Manhattan's towers gleam like jewels. At Bella Vista, Vincent Romano arrived early, as he had every day for 8 years. He unlocked the heavy oak doors and stepped inside, breathing in the familiar scent of lemon oil and starched linen. But something was different. Sitting at the bar, silhouetted against morning light, was a figure he recognized. Sarah Mitchell sat with perfect posture, golden hair catching the light. Gone were the delivery clothes. In their place was a tailored navy blazer, crisp white shirt, and elegant trousers that spoke of boardrooms and power lunches. She was reading financial documents, a steaming cup of coffee at her elbow. Vincent's blood ran cold. His hands trembled as he approached, his mind refusing to process what his eyes were telling him. "Good morning, Vincent," Sarah said without looking up from her papers. Her voice was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its composure. "I trust you slept well. How did you get in here?" Vincent stammered, his usual authority nowhere to be found. Sarah finally looked up, her blue eyes meeting his with the kind of direct gaze that he had spent years teaching his staff to avoid giving customers. "I used my key," she said simply. "After all, I do own the building." The words hit Vincent like a physical blow. He gripped the back of a chair to steady himself, mind reeling. "That's impossible. The Torino Group owns this building. They've owned it for 15 years. Sarah finished for him. Yes, I know. I bought them out 6 months ago, along with their entire restaurant portfolio. She set down her papers and gave him her full attention. All 37 locations. Actually, Bella Vista, Carmino's, Il Giardino, Marco's Table. Shall I continue? Vincent's legs nearly gave out. The Torino Group was one of Manhattan's most established restaurant empires, worth hundreds of millions. The idea that this young woman could have acquired them was beyond comprehension. But you were delivering pizza, he said weakly, clinging to this fact as if it might restore order to his universe. Sarah smiled, not cruelly, but with something sadder, more knowing. Yes, I was, for 3 months. I worked for Tony's Pizza, delivering to every restaurant in this chain. I wanted to understand the business from the ground up. I wanted to see how employees were treated, how customers behaved, what the real culture was like. She stood, moving gracefully through the dining room, fingertips trailing along table edges as if reacquainting herself with a space she now owned completely. Do you know what I learned, Vincent? She continued, her voice carrying clearly through the empty restaurant. I learned that power makes people cruel. I watched servers humiliated by customers who thought their wealth gave them the right to treat others as less than human. I saw managers who ruled through fear. I witnessed a culture that celebrated exclusion and disdain. But even as she spoke with conviction, Sarah felt a familiar flutter of doubt in her chest. The weight of what she was attempting, transforming an entire restaurant empire, changing deep-seated cultural patterns, suddenly seemed overwhelming. What if she was wrong? What if authentic leadership wasn't enough to overcome decades of entrenched attitudes? For a moment, the confident facade wavered as she wondered if she was naive to believe she could succeed where others had failed. Vincent followed her at a distance, like a man walking to his execution. Miss Mitchell, if I knew who you were, you would have treated me differently, Sarah finished, turning to face him, pushing through her moment of uncertainty with renewed determination. That's exactly the problem. Vincent, respect shouldn't be conditional on someone's bank account. Dignity shouldn't be a privilege reserved for the wealthy. She moved to the windows, looking out at the city beyond. My father built his fortune in technology. Yes, but he taught me that money without purpose is just numbers on a screen. I've spent the last 5 years learning business, not in classrooms, but on the ground. I've worked in warehouses, kitchens, retail stores, delivery services. I wanted to understand what it really means to work for a living. Vincent's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The implications were staggering. Sarah Mitchell. Mitchell as in Mitchell Technologies, the company that had revolutionized cloud computing and was worth over $20 billion. Richard Mitchell's daughter, who had famously disappeared from the social scene years ago. You're Richard Mitchell's daughter, he whispered. I am, Sarah confirmed. And as of this morning, I'm also the sole owner of what used to be the Torino Restaurant Group. Which brings us to why I'm here. She walked back to the bar, where her papers were spread out like battle plans. These restaurants have incredible potential. Vincent, beautiful spaces, talented chefs, dedicated staff, but they're poisoned by a culture that treats service as servitude, that mistakes cruelty for sophistication. Vincent swallowed hard. What are you going to do? Sarah's smile was gentle but implacable. I'm going to change everything, starting with leadership that understands what hospitality really means. People who treat every employee and every customer with dignity, regardless of their job title or bank balance. The meaning was clear. Vincent's career at Bella Vista was over. 8 years of building his reputation, of cultivating relationships, of creating what he thought was excellence, all of it crumbling because he had failed to see the person behind the pizza delivery uniform. I understand, Was. he said quietly, his voice barely audible. I hope you do, Sarah replied, and there was genuine compassion in her tone. Because this isn't about revenge, Vincent, it's about creating something better. 6 months later, Vincent Romano stood in Nana's kitchen in Brooklyn, preparing for the dinner rush. The restaurant was smaller than Bella Vista, the atmosphere warmer. As assistant manager, Vincent had initially struggled with the transition, but gradually he began to notice how respect flowed naturally in all directions, how the staff treated each other as family rather than hierarchy. Vincent called Rosa, the owner. Table 6 needs assistance with wine selection. 6 months ago, Vincent would have assigned the task to someone else. Now he approached the young couple himself, clearly on a special date, carefully studying the menu prices. Instead of intimidating them, he found himself genuinely wanting to help them have a perfect evening within their budget. May I suggest our house Chianti? He offered warmly. It pairs beautifully with our pasta dishes. The relief and gratitude in their eyes reminded him of something Sarah Mitchell had said about dignity being universal. As he poured their wine, Vincent realized he was learning what hospitality actually meant, not performing superiority, but creating genuine comfort for others. The transformation of the Torino restaurant group, now renamed Mitchell Hospitality, became the talk of Manhattan's restaurant industry within weeks. Trade publications wrote lengthy features about the mysterious heiress who had spent months undercover, learning her business from the bottom up. But Sarah's real challenges came during the transition months. Investors questioned her youth and experience. Longtime managers resisted changes to established systems. Some employees, comfortable with the old hierarchy, struggled to adapt to a culture that valued input from everyone. During late-night strategy sessions in her office, Sarah often found herself second-guessing decisions, wondering if she was moving too fast or not fast enough. The breakthrough came during a particularly difficult staff meeting at Il Giardino. When a veteran server finally spoke up, Ms. Mitchell, I've worked in restaurants for 20 years, and I've never had an owner ask what I think about improving customer service. That tells me everything I need to know about whether this will work. For Sarah, the real satisfaction came from smaller moments. The server who no longer flinched when customers raised their voices, knowing management would support them, the cook who suggested menu improvements without fear of dismissal, the hostess who could seat customers based on availability rather than wallet size. She kept her office simple: a desk, 2 chairs, and a window overlooking the city, where she had learned that true power came not from commanding respect, but from earning it. On her desk sat a small reminder of her journey, a pizza delivery receipt from her last shift, signed by Marcus Castellano. Marcus, for his part, became one of Mitchell Hospitality's most vocal supporters, often telling the story of the night he had stiffed a pizza delivery girl who turned out to own the restaurant. The tale never failed to leave his listeners speechless, just as Sarah had left him that night when she revealed her black card. Sarah's story spread beyond the restaurant industry, inspiring other young leaders to spend time understanding their businesses from the ground up. But she remained largely out of the spotlight, preferring to let her actions speak louder than press releases. Late at night, when the restaurants were closed and the city settled into restless sleep, Sarah would sometimes walk through her establishments, checking on late shift workers, listening to their concerns, remembering what it felt like to carry heavy pizza boxes through rain to people who saw her as invisible. She had proven that power could be gentle, that leadership could be quiet, that sometimes the most profound changes came not from those who demanded attention, but from those who simply refused to accept that dignity was negotiable. In a world that often measured worth by wealth, Sarah Mitchell had shown that true value came from understanding what it meant to serve others, and ensuring that everyone who worked for her was treated with the respect they deserved, regardless of whether they wore delivery uniforms or designer suits. The pizza boxes were gone, but the lessons they had taught remained, shaping a new kind of hospitality that honored every person who walked through the door, whether they came to dine or simply to drop off food on a rainy Thursday night.